Hello guys, me again, I'm Nafith. So today in this video we will explain certain tasks and the relationship between Aruba Central and Aruba OS switches. So these switches are the not CX switches, but the same principle applies. So we're going to discuss a few things in this case, how to zero-touch provision, but not using activate. We just the switch will have factory defaulted, pick up an IP address. We'll look at firmware update, and we'll look at use cases of two types of groups: GUI interface group, and which is the kind of GUI interface, and the other one is the template group. And we'll see the relationship between these two different groups. In the template group, we'll look also at variables, and we'll look at how to manipulate the value for the variables, how to push these settings to the switch in both of these groups. We'll look at how to create a new variables and a variable, and we will look at how the stack works, how to add two stack switches to Aruba Central. Let's go. So this is use case 1. We have a switch here. It's not yet connected. Now the switch is factory defaulted, and the switch will pick up an IP address using DHCP, which we will enable in a few minutes. So you can clearly see the switch has no configuration. If we issue the command show running config, there's nothing on the switch literally, and it is 2930F switch, and that's the switch model basically, right, which is the host name by default. So what we're going to do, we're going to enable this switch to pick up an IP. That IP address will be pushed to the switch, including DNS, default gateway. That will enable the switch to connect to the outside world, and then that enable the switch to connect to Aruba Central. So we verify the switch details basically here, and to make sure that in Aruba Central we have assigned a license for that switch. So the central account, what we're going to see is MSP account. Regardless, it can be a normal account, customer, enterprise account type. But the in Central we have added the switch, and we assign license to that switch. We'll verify this. Number one, we're going to see show system here, and in the show system we can see this is the MAC address of the switch and the serial number. We can search based on any of these, so we can just copy this one, and we log into Aruba Central and search for that MAC and or that serial number, and verify that the switch has been assigned a license. So again, the switch is not yet connected to the internet. So that's Aruba Central. We're going to just look for that, search for that serial number. We can see the switch has been assigned to a certain customer, and we can look at that switch has already been assigned. This is the customer that this switch has been assigned to. Obviously this is just a lab environment, and you can look into that switch again to find out that we have assigned a license for that specific switch. So this foundation license, and this belongs to 62 the CX series or 29 on the Aruba OS. This is the one we have at hand. So already been assigned and everything. Right, let's have a look now. We try to connect the switch to the internet, enable DHCP to be picked up, so the IP address will be pushed to the switch. So let's have a look at the IP now. We enable the DHCP, show IP on this switch. Now the IP that was assigned to this switch is 192.168.1.1. and that's the new IP address that has been assigned to the switch. So let's verify that the switch has picked up the central here. Show central. So it is automatically mapped to central account, as you can clearly see here, straight away. There's no problem. It is already been mapped to central account. Let's double check. Where do we see the switch up in Central? It should be yes. So in Central here, if you look at devices, we see an access point already been added. Here switch is online, and it is up. Basically, it's nothing really managed yet. So it's fully managed, that's correct, but it means there's no configuration being pushed. And if you notice device pre-provisioning here, we can see that that device has been added to Aruba Central without any effort from our side. So this is, and notice that it has belonged to default VLAN. Now this is the GUI interface, or the GUI V interface, GUI interface group. You can always go to that VLAN to get to that AP group, or to that device group, and it's default. You go to devices, you'll find the switch listed there. And if you need to configure anything, for example, you go to the config, and anything you need to configure here, you start adding it from here, basically. So example here, we can look at the, so of course you can click on the switch and find information. You go to interfaces. Inside the interfaces, say we have VLANs. How many VLANs we have? We have the only single VLAN. That is a default VLAN. We can add another VLAN. Let us just for verification purpose. And the VLAN ID, let us say, call it VLAN 100. And the name of that VLAN is test VLAN. Assignment, we leave everything as is. That is not the management VLAN, primary VLAN. We leave all these different features, but the DCP server obviously is not enabled. So we can scroll down, all other features, voice and IP helper. So all details of that VLAN will be added to this. And then if there's any port that we need to trunk port, or we need just to make members of that VLAN, we'll not do anything. We just verify that the VLAN has been created. We're going to save these settings. So whatever VLAN we have created here, it will be pushed back to the switch configuration, running config. We will examine that running config right now. So that's the switch, and we're going to say show VLANs. We can see a new VLAN has been created from the GUI, from the group GUI interface and central. So we push that VLAN into this switch. So let's now perform software update or firmware update. Let's double check and make sure that the switch is still managed by Central. Show Aruba Central. Yes. And let's verify that the version on the running on this one is now, the active one is 16.05. And if we look at the show flash, which is showing us the two flash areas, primary and secondary, one is 16.05 and the secondary image is 16.08. So we're gonna go to Central and upgrade this firmware to the recommended one by Central. So that's Central account. For the time being, the switch belongs to default group, but you could go to the firmware here. We are trying to look at the switch. So click on the switches. Now with the global, it means it will show us everything here. We only have one device. We can say upgrade all, obviously, or you can set compliance and dictate set operating system compliance and just dictate which group you're looking for, and that's and this is the firmware version for Aruba AOS, and then if you have any custom build or something like that. Yeah, so we're gonna just not use this, we're gonna upgrade this, and it asks you what you would like to upgrade. We go for the recommended version, and the recommended version, if you would like, is 16.10. So I'll cancel this. Look at the column here, recommended version is 16.10.0022. We go for that, and we go for the recommended version. We're going to do it now, and we'll push this one to the primary. You could go for secondary, but we go for primary, and we would like to automatically to reboot the switch. Click on upgrade and success. So we're going to say okay here, and we'll double check in a few seconds. The switch should be starting rebooting. The switch is rebooting right now, as you can clearly see. So we're going to wait and come back and double check the new firmware once that's been updated. You can see it's been updated, and we're just waiting for the switch to boot. That's a primary image 16.10. Now the system has booted. We're going to press enter twice and see where we are. Show version. We can see the version has been updated to 16. That's a new version has been updated. And if I issue the command show flash, obviously we can clearly see the primary now has been updated. That's the date. Verify Aruba Central, show Aruba Central command, everything is managed, everything is connected, all success. So that is perfect. Now we can look at the switch from Central perspective. We should be able to see the switch with the new software update listed in the in Aruba Central. Let's apply some configuration to the switch, change the host name for example, and then probably add a new VLAN to that switch as well. Yeah. So we go to devices and we go to the config. And now we click on switches, and that's the switch. And we can edit the switch here, for example, give a name. Let us say call it lab switch. And other location, other details, we'll just leave it as is. And that's lab switch. And probably we go to interfaces. Continue. We're going to save the changes. And we probably go to the interfaces. And we go to the VLAN. Let's create this VLAN exists there. VLAN test. We leave it as is. Now what we're going to do, we're going to move the switch to a different group. So this is now the switch is a member of default group, and that default group is a GUI based group. So we're going to create another GUI group, and we'll move the switch to that other GUI group. So if we go and create, let's call it switch GUI, and that applies to the switch, and it is GUI based. And in this case it doesn't really matter, so we go to this, and there we go. So what we're going to do now, we will go to the expand the switch group, and then we will move the switch to the newly created group, and that's switch GUI group, and we're going to say move. So now the switch has been moved from the default GUI group into a newly created group that's called SW GUI. And now we can go to that specific group and see the switch listed here. We see devices, we go to the list, and we're going to see the switch listed in the group. It's going to show up. Now you can see the switch because it's moved to a newly created GUI group, and that group did not have any configuration. It has lost the VLAN that used to exist on that switch. So you have to be careful between when you move switch to different groups. So let's recreate the VLAN here. So we're going to just add a new VLAN. Again, that's for testing purpose. VLAN ID, let's say 1000, and the name just test. Test VLAN probably. And there we go. That's all done. Save it. If you look at the command line, you're going to see that VLAN exists on the switch. So that's a command line, and we issue the command show VLAN. Everything is fine, and we can see that VLAN has been pushed to the switch. What we are going to do now, I'll show you when you move the switch from a GUI group into a template based group. What will happen to the switch configuration? Would we lose anything in this case or not? We'll have a look at that in a minute. So let's create a new template based group for the switch. So we're gonna go for this, click on the group number here and go plus. I'm gonna say switch, just give it a name, template. and we're going to go for switches. We create a template base, right, and we'll go next. Now we can leave it as is this time. Again, it won't make much difference because we only have one type of the switches. And we're going to move the switch from the GUI basic group into a template basic group. So if we click on the move, and the destination group is switch template, and that group will be used. So now the switch has been moved from a GUI group to a template group. Now let us see the impact of that. So let's go to that template group specific. Now what will happen is the switch will lose nothing. The switch will keep its configuration. And the very reason for that, because we have not, in the template group, we have not created any template yet. So there's no template by default. What will happen, the variables, so any settings that are on the switch will be read by the system, but nothing will be impacted, i.e. there's no template basically created, and you're going to notice that nothing changes on the switch because the template has no configuration yet. So we'll verify this one by issuing the command show VLAN on the switch CLI command. So that's the switch CLI. This is show VLANs. The VLAN has been kept here. Nothing has changed. Now the switch still is managed by Central. We cannot manage it locally because it's fully managed, and we will again reiterate this. Show Aruba Central. You're going to see it is managed by Central. Try to go to config, and in the config here we can see if I try to issue a command interface, that will not be accepted because it is in management mode. Basically it's fully managed by Central, and you can only have read-only access to a local either GUI interface or command line interface. I'll show you now later on how to configure the template. So we're going to create a template, and we're going to push probably a new VLAN created in the template into the switch and see how that switch behaves in this case. But before that, we're going to also show you that if you try to move the switch back to a GUI group, that will be rejected. And this to protect the switch configuration. So moving back from the template group into GUI based group, that is not permitted in Aruba Central. And for very good reason for that. So now let's try to move the switch back from the template group into the GUI based group. That will be rejected by Aruba Central. The reason, as you could see before, when we move the switch from one GUI to another GUI, that new GUI group that had no config has been overriding whatever configuration on that switch, and it was lost. So now this is the switch in our template basic group. Click on that switch and we're going to move it. We're going to select one of these GUI groups. Let's go for this and say move. Rejection: the following devices cannot be moved from template basic group to a user interface group. Please delete the device and perform a factory reset to onboard the device to the new GUI group. And that's exactly expected, and that makes perfect sense. So let's create a new template now. Let's go to this is a template group. We go to devices. We are on the config here, and we go to the template, and we go this is the one, and we're going to add a new template. Just give it a name, say switch and it's Aruba switches, not CX, so it's Aruba switches. We can, in this case, we're going to select the model 2930 switch, or we can just leave it, the part number is the specifics for that, we leave it as is. We revisit this one later on when we look at the stack, and we're going to say next. Now you're going to select the switch that is applicable. So the only switch we have is lab switch, and that is the list of configuration we have. Now the switch doesn't have a password configured on it. So what will happen here, if you try to save it, you'll get a warning or error message that a password must be set. Command missing in template. So what we're going to do, we will go to the very bottom of the switch configuration list, press carriage retain, enter. You have to be at the beginning of the line, so I move the cursor 3 steps back. I'm going to just say password manager. So this is the level of password manager. We leave it as is. So password manager, plain text manager, and that should be accepted by the switch. So now in this case, you can see the switch template has been created. We have not made any changes to the switch at all whatsoever, and the switch template has been generated. We can see the variables here are actually a copy of that what the switch configuration we have. Now let's just remember what is a template, and when you create a template, what will happen if we edit this template, what will happen in this case, the system will generate variables. So these variables come in the format of underscore sys underscore and the variable name, and they are delimited by percentage sign by default, so before and after. Notice, for example, the host name has been changed to a variable here. Any configuration you created before on the switch, standard config from your manual, like a user configuration, like in this case VLAN 100 or 1000, has not changed, because it wouldn't know that you would like to make it a variable or not. So you decide later on probably that I would like to make this VLAN as a variable, and you can clearly see what we have seen in here. Let's create a new VLAN. So now we have created the template. The switch has not been impacted whatsoever. The switch is still managed by Central. We can create a new VLAN. Let us add a new VLAN. We go to the end of the text, and we can say VLAN, say 99 or 999, and we have to make sure there's an indentation. I use 1 tab indentation and give it a name, the name of your choice. Let's say call it VLAN underscore 999, and then there we go. There's no IP address. We leave it as is, and we type exit. Make it simple. Make simple configuration. So we try to create VLAN 999. We gave it a name, very simple, VLAN 999, and that's it. We're going to save this. Now, if everything works fine, the update should go and be pushed to the switch within a few seconds. Let's have a look at the switch right now. So that's our switch, and we can issue the command show VLAN if you like. VLAN 999 has been created and pushed to the switch. So we could see that how we could manage to push that VLAN 999. Now this is static way of creating the VLAN on the template. We could make this or these VLANs as variables. We can create a variable and then give it a value, and then add it to the template, use it in the template. So it's possible for that variable to be used. So on the template, you can make changes to the values online, i.e. on the interface of the Central, or you can download a comma separated value or JSON format, edit it offline, make changes, add variables, remove variables, and so on, and then re-upload it again. I'll show you both of these cases. So here we can see the switch and the template. I'll click on the variables. These are the variables used inside the template. Right. Now, if I would like to change, notice that the VLAN that we have created and the older VLAN, the 1000 VLAN, do not exist here because they are not variables. They are fixed values. So let's go and just change the switch name. And let's call this one switch name lab switch underscore template. Okay, and just save it. So what we've done literally here, we have updated. Sometimes we have to refresh the page for that to be reflected. We have updated the host name of the switch online from the list of variables available in this case. So if we check the switch now interface, we're going to see the switch name has been changed, host name has been changed to the new one. So notice the host name has been changed to the new host name. That's something that been pushed from the template into the switch itself. So we would like then to create template, in the template we'd like to create a new variable, and that new variable will be assigned a value, and then we will be using that variable inside the template, and then we will see the value that will be pushed into the switch itself. Let's have a look. So now we are going to download JSON format of the variables file. We will download that. We will use Notepad++ to edit that file and then create a new variable in that file. Let's have a look. So this is the JSON format of the switch template part of that. What we will do, we'll add another variable, and you'll notice that this is something the VLAN will untag. The reason for Jan 2052 is because that has been interpreted as a date. So in reality, if you look at the switch, that's very important. If you look at the switch VLAN 1 untagged, and we're going to see the VLAN 1 untagged is ranging from certain interfaces. We'll double check that, and we're going to just fix this because this is going to create us an issue. So on the switch here, show VLAN 1. We can see VLAN 1 is a member of ports 1 up to 52. And that was interpreted one as January, which is a date. That has to be fixed inside the downloaded JSON format file. So we're going to go to this one, and we're going to change this one to 1. That makes sense. And let's add another variable. So we're going to just have a comma here, and we will follow the same syntax. So let's say we're going to copy the whole lot, and we're going to make changes to make it easy for us. So basically we come here and we paste it here. Obviously we're going to change all of that. So let us say I would like to create a new VLAN. I would like to call it uplink VLAN. So, and then we will add that as a variable. So we're going to just VLAN, and let's call it uplink VLAN. So there will be a variable that is uplink VLAN. And let us say the value for that VLAN is VLAN 2000. That's all what we need to do. We're going to save this file and then upload it back to the template. So file, we're going to save as, just I like always to save a different name just to make sure that we are on the right path. I'm going to say updated. I'm going to save this. Now we're going to look into Central and upload this file again. So that is Central, upload variable, and just to make sure that we are uploading the correct one, and that's a download folder. We go to the download folder, and this is the one updated. We just edited it, and off you go. Variable uploaded successfully. Now we should, let's refresh the page just in case to update this list. We should see something called uplink here somewhere, and the uplink value is 2000 now. That's a variable that was generated or created by us. Now if I need to use this one, let us create, so we go into the template and we will use that inside the template. So we'll go to template, and we're going to scroll to the bottom of the template, and we're going to add the VLAN as a variable now. So let's add that VLAN as a variable. What we're going to do, we're going to say VLAN space, then percentage, then we'll just paste the variable. That's a variable value. So basic is going to be the value for that specific VLAN. So the name will be _sys, and that's the VLAN variable name basically. And we're going to do that. Let's give it a name. We use one tab. Name here will be also the same. Let's just go for, and then to make sure I don't make mistakes here, copy this, paste it here, and that would be the value. So let's say name VLAN underscore that value, and then we close this one, and then we say exit. If we have not made any mistakes here, that then will be accepted as is. We're going to do this. So we added the VLAN variable here, and then that's a variable value, and that's the name of the VLAN we created. So we're going to go save it. If we have not made any spelling mistakes or any typo, that should be accepted. It means that if I go back now to the switch and check the list of the VLANs, we're going to see one extra VLAN has been added to the switch, and that VLAN, not static VLAN, it is added as a variable. So later on, if you need to push this VLAN to multiple switches, then you can change the value for that VLAN on different switches in this case. So we can have a look now at the switch configuration. So show VLAN, should see VLAN, extra VLAN, that is VLAN 2000 that we have added as a variable. Assume that this needs to be changed in 20 switches, or needs to have different values for different switches. In this case, I can have this one different values for different switches. So I could edit this VLAN from the actual variable file in online, meaning on the cloud, and I can give it a new value. We can try that now. Let's say make this VLAN 3000. So here we go to the variables, and the VLAN that is 2000 here, we will be edit this one and just make it 3000. All done. So now the value, if we refresh the page, the value for that VLAN will be 3000. If we go back to the switch, you will notice that that VLAN has a value of 3000 rather than 2000. Probably it will take time to update, but now the switch should have been updated immediately. Same command, and that's a new VLAN value 3000. This is a demonstration for how to create a template, download a file. On this very same basis, JSON format, you could download the comma separated value format as well. So the same principle applies. You will download comma separated value, and then you will have you can create a new variables, add extra variables if you like, and then use these variables inside the template, and then these will be substituted with the values you wish to substitute to. So that's an example of a stack of switches. You can see that this stack of 2 switches connected to Aruba Central, fully managed. And if you look at the interface brief, you notice this switch these 2 switches have been stacked. Now the switches have been assigned to Central, and then have been also assigned licenses in Central. We would like to add these, or the stack of these 2 switches, to a GUI group inside that specific customer. Probably aware of the fact that the stack should have an icon here. If you click on this switch, you'll notice it's talking about the stack, 2 members here, and everything looks fine. And if you go back to the global here, we go to organization, these 2 switches now in the stack. You can see all 4 switches here, and notice we have 2 unprovisioned, so that's table 11. So let's just add these 2 switches to the GUI group. So that will be switch GUI. Cannot be moved to UI group and can be managed by template group only. Table 11. See, now because the switch has already been stacked outside, you are able only to manage it by a template group. And this makes sense because if you add the switches to a GUI group, they will lose all the configs, including the stack issues. That would be a big issue. So here we can move these two switches. Remember, these are the serial numbers, and that's the correct serial numbers. And we can move them to, because right now they belong to no group, basically. So we're gonna do this, and we will have to use the template-based group. We'll not create a template, but we'll move the switch to that group specific. So you can see the switches now belong to a GUI-based group. Sorry, now you can see the switches belong to a template-based group.